Welcome back to Doppelganger, another Twin Peaks podcast. This is Doppelganger Dell.
This is Doppelganger Aaron.
I think I said Doppelganger. Doppelganger?
That's fine.
Doppelganger. But I'm coming to you live from the Packer Sawmill, as you can see if you're watching. They are working very hard, lots of steam, lots of milling of logs. How are things over in the lodge, Aaron?
Lots of Garmonbozia, so I'm doing great. People who are at a high level like me will know what Garmonbozia is.
Oh, I guess I'll have to find out someday.
Yeah, it's creamed corn.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll get into it. We'll eventually get there.
Well, I bet it doesn't taste as good as fish in the percolator, as we'll find out in this episode.
The percolator.
There's a fish in the percolator. We have to do a Pete quote count each episode. The first episode, he says, "They found her body wrapped in plastic." And in this episode, he says, "There was a fish in the percolator."
Yeah.
In Twin Peaks lore, do they ever find out why that happens?
No, but I have some theories, and so do others.
Okay, well, maybe we'll save that for our special theory episode.
Well, I can divulge it in this episode.
Okay. So
do we have like a quick summary?
Yeah, let's get down to business here. So we open up on the Great Northern Hotel, and from IMDb, they provided us with a very quick kind of overview of what's going on. So Agent Cooper, he's enjoying the comforts of the Great Northern Hotel. Bobby Briggs and Mike Nelson are released from jail, and Dr. Hayward hands over the autopsy report on Laura Palmer. So things are developing. Dale Cooper, who we meet in the first episode, is now starting to interview people. They're kind of looking at Laura's body and seeing what happened to her, trying to figure that out. They are starting to put the pieces together. So Aaron, take it away.
Well, in terms of how the series progresses, it's almost like every episode is the next day or the next 2 days. So this is the day after Laura was discovered murdered. But in real people time, the pilot was filmed in February of 1989, and then it took a while to get the series to be picked up and shooting again. So this is shooting in like October 1989. And wow. I think there's kind of a visual difference because the pilot was filmed 100% on location. And then the second episode, those are all sets in LA.
I feel that I feel like I've gotten that sense from other shows before, where the pilot, it's pilot season, they're trying to get picked up, so they go all out, and then then we sit back with the normal stuff, or whatever. Right. I feel like that's happened before. But I know with like cartoons, they've done that a lot with like the voices of a famous person in the first episode, and then after that, they kind of like impersonators. Yeah. So
to me, watching this episode, kind of having all my Twin Peaks knowledge, is I don't think this is like a blockbuster episode by any means, or it's particularly iconic, but I do think it gets the engine revving for what is to be the first season. Like you said, Dale Cooper starts his investigation. We learn a little bit more about Laura. But I think the grief continues. What struck me is we're still spending time for people to react to Laura Palmer's death, and that happens with Dr. Haywood. He's in the sheriff's office, and he's reacting, looking at a photo of Laura, a dead Laura. So that continues. And I would also say that this is when we start to maybe get suspicious of people.
Yes. Yep. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of instances in this episode where you see weird things. Like you see I think you're right. It's not a blockbuster episode, but it keeps the weirdness at such a level that it does keep you interested. You're finding out that there's an affair going on. Mm-hmm. You're finding out more about Nadine, how maybe there's some like jealousy happening. You're finding out with the students and the kids, like with James, that he's the secret boyfriend, or he took the video, that there was the hiker or whatever. you're finding out, and there's a guy with one arm just walking through the hospital. Like there's all of these like loose ends that just get thrown out there. This is where you meet Bob.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
all of these crazy characters come out without explanation, and that's just enough to kind of keep you like, okay, this is something different than your regular police show. Like something different is happening.
Well, when you first watch this, when we start to get a sense of like identifying suspects, who were you suspicious of?
I think I'm suspicious of, oh man, like the, what's her name? The sister who runs the sawmill. Catherine. She's having an affair with the lodge. I'm really bad with people's names in real life and in shows, so I'm just going to call them by their occupation. Catherine in an affair with lodge guy, and then they're talking about like, oh, the sawmill, and we're going to run into the ground and take all the money. But I don't know if they I think they're devious, but I don't think they really necessitate being suspects.
Sure.
Like they're trying to take advantage of it. I definitely get the vibe that the creepy dude in the room who appears out of nowhere and Bob, is suspect. Because like he's just there at the end of the bed, and she's like, mom's freaking out.
Yeah, but what's interesting is that we only get one shot of him.
Yeah, but he's mysterious and creepy.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it warrants some kind of panic because the other suspects we spend a little bit more time with and see that they're human. But this is like so shocking and weird.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's only like in literally one shot.
You're like a hallucination.
Like, in a world of Twin Peaks with log ladies and eye patch ladies, how much attention are we supposed to be paying to this? So that's what kind of struck me as interesting. But Del, this might be an unpopular opinion, but from the jump, I thought Donna was a suspect.
Yeah, okay. What made you think Donna was a suspect?
Because she had something to gain. Like, she was secretly in love with James. So by getting Laura out of the picture, she could have James to herself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think by like normal TV conventions, if I was to watch it and if it was like a shorter form series or a show, it would be like, yes, the jealous girlfriend is an easy pick, or it could be, the people having an affair to shut down the sawmill. They're colluding and they made a conspiracy. But for me, I don't feel like watching it, I really met anyone that convinced me that they were guilty, but it just kind of had more questions than answers, I guess.
I think to me, the two biggest suspects that jump out in a conventional way are Leo, because we see that he's a terrorist and he's a woman abuser and he has a bloody shirt. And like,
I wrote that.
Have like a lot of neon signs pointing at him,
Bloody shirt. Yeah, I think. Okay, now that you mentioned Leo, I'm like, yes, Leo, and I wrote that down because I thought it was weird that they had a washing machine outside of their house.
The Northwest, man.
Is that's what they do? Portland style?
I think the climate is such that you can do that. Yeah.
That's fascinating. So yeah, so now that you say it, Leo did it, but I feel that someone put him up to it. He seems like an asshole and a terrible person.
Well, you wonder how he's connected because he's just a random trucker.
Right.
I would say the other person who jumps out as a suspect is Jacoby.
Yes, Dr. Jacoby, because of the tapes, he's listening. And then whenever they do a Laura voiceover, she always sounds like really wasted. And just, hey, Dr. Jacoby. Like, I'm under some substance. I'm Laura Palmer. Thanks, I'm just talking to you. And I think the very first time I watched it, I was like, he's involved and Leo's involved. But on my second time around, just trying to watch it with like clean, like new eyes, I was like, well, if I didn't know, like I guess I couldn't really tell. They did a good job of kind of making everybody seem like a suspect.
It's well known that Laura was a fan of the nose candy.
They try to make that pretty clear.
Yeah. So, I have a lot of thoughts about Josie. So let's take a couple steps back. the very first shot of the show is Josie like looking weird, like she knows something weird is going on.
Right. Yeah. In the very first episode.
That's never addressed. But then we go to the second episode, and there's a scene where Cooper and Truman want to go and interview Josie.
Right.
You know, they want to go talk to Josie because Laura was instructing her in English. And Josie says Laura was here the day before she died, and she was upset about something, and that's all that happened. Now, Del, let me just ask you a question. How do you think the fish got in that percolator?
Laura put it in there.
No, because like it happened in that moment because there's a shot. Yeah, exactly. Because there's a shot of Pete cleaning the fish, and then Josie is left alone to make coffee. So, like, why would Josie want to put fish in the percolator?
Well, okay, good question, and I think I have an answer. And I don't think it's malicious because they play it off that she's learning English. She's doesn't know a lot of our idioms, and the one thing she says is "top on the morning to you, Pete," and he thinks that's funny. Oh, top of the morning, and so maybe she puts the fish in the percolator because a percolator is a weird way to make coffee. The only people that I know who use percolators are old church ladies, and so maybe she's like, maybe I put fish in it, and that will help. Maybe it's part of the process. Maybe it gives it some umami flavoring that we all know and love.
No, I think she's doing it because I think she's a totally duplicitous person. And here's the thing.
She's playing dumb. She's playing dumb, you think?
Yeah, I think her having this entire act of like not knowing how to speak English well is an entire act because later on in the series, she has like private conversations with people where she's not doing this act of, I don't know how to speak English very well.
Aaron, how many shows have you seen where a character has an English accent and then all of a sudden it goes away and then it comes back? Like, that's just TV.
Yeah, but like we go into her character more and we learn that she's a very duplicitous person and like she obviously knows English. So, and also, so I think that she put fish in the percolator to like distract the investigators or to like get rid of them. Because I firmly believe that like there is something going on with Josie and Laura's death. Like, there's so many people in this town who could be connected. I just feel like there's something suspicious going on with her.
A scene that I enjoyed was when Nadine runs into Norma at the store because clearly Norma is just like, okay, whatever, Nadine, and Nadine is just like has something to prove, and then is just like, I've got my blinds, and they are so quiet. We got balls, and she's so excited. And just like, have you ever met that like? I was not like the popular kid or anything like that, but there's always somebody who's always trying to like prove something, and I don't know if you have that experience. You're just watching in a movie, or like, I just remember this one kid that I knew who was always trying to like, oh yeah, me every time, and I just like, I don't know what's happening, and I'll prove you wrong, and there's just this like real like Napoleon energy coming off of Nadine in that like chip on her shoulder, I'm gonna take you out sort of thing. It was very bizarre. It fit the eye patch character of her,
I think we're supposed to view her as like someone to maybe not take pity, but like be concerned about, because I think she is kind of like sad in her life, not really having a purpose, and she might have a screw loose. You know, there's something maybe a little bit wrong with her, so she's fixating on these silent drapes. Because she is kind of like a bored, lonely housewife to a certain degree. And I think she knows that her husband is cheating on her with Norma, who, you know, is a gorgeous blonde broad. So I think there's something to that where, I don't really know if pity is the right word, but like I kind of have concern for Nadine because she's so very fragile. But what's interesting is like she's a fragile person, but she's also like ferocious in her presentation and like want to like jump down your throat and bite your head off with her exuberance.
Right, exactly. And that's what, knowing, watching going forward kind of the situation, like, okay, I get it. Like, I feel that if, I ran into someone that was cheating on my spouse with them, I would probably be similar. But then, she takes it down this Drake's road, which is like, what? But I just think beyond the characters, I just feel like the actors did such a good job with it because it's such a short scene. There's so much space and there's so much tension, and I feel like it's just really well done. It's just so simple, but I think it's like a perfect scene. I really like it a lot.
One of my favorite scenes in this episode is Cooper has his first visit to the Double R, and he just like orders like 3 cherry pie plates, and he has his first physical encounter with the log lady. And the log lady, what I think is interesting is like, I think a lot of people get distracted by the log, obviously, because we don't necessarily see people carrying on logs every day, but I think she's a fairly like pragmatic, direct person.
Yeah.
And she says something to the effect of, my log will have something to say soon about what happened to Laura Palmer.
My log saw something that night.
Yeah, and she invites Cooper to ask it a question, and he doesn't. And she's like, I thought so. And I just think it's interesting because like later on, we learn more about Dale Cooper, and he seems more of this person who's like in tune with the bizarre or unorthodox methods. But, here's an instance where he doesn't really go into that. He doesn't take that invitation. And I just found that kind of interesting.
Well, that kind of leads me into something that I was thinking about earlier, how I think the more literally and seriously you take Twin Peaks, the harder it is to understand. But you can't just go totally symbolic, because then you'll just go crazy. But I do think there's this in-between point where this whole, at least this episode, is about dealing with demons. You see a demon, there are, you learn about people's pasts, you see Bob, like there's all these demons and these turmoils. And then you have like, in that battle with demons, you have like your inner voice of Dale Cooper and Diane. And then you have the log lady, which is kind of like this doubt character of like, do you trust me? Do you not? Like, everything has these like conceptual stand-ins, and the more it just seems that's like the thing with Twin Peaks. Like the more you think about it, the more it makes sense and doesn't make sense, and the better it gets.
Yeah.
Like the more you're into it, the weirder it is, and the better it gets. Because I now see it as this allegory of like inner struggle, like Laura's struggle, and the parent, everybody's struggle, Bobby's struggle, his Bobby's dad who's in the Air Force, very strict. Like all these people are wrestling with these things, and the show kind of lays out in a visual format of like this very like artistic display of people dealing with demons, and I think that's really cool. I really like Twin Peaks for that.
Yeah, I think there are multiple levels that someone can watch the original run of Twin Peaks and get enjoyment out of it, and that is what is interesting about TV, because TV is an entirely commercial engine. So I think it's interesting when you do get good broadcast television, because it's like the merging of art and commerce.
Yeah.
Because
it's like a subversion of the form, it's like, we're gonna take this thing that's commercial, that's short, that's quick, that gives you satisfaction, and we're gonna make you think about it. And that's really cool.
Yeah, and think about the context of 1990. We had 4 national broadcast channels. Not everyone had cable. Obviously streaming wasn't a thing. So like your TV options were limited, and that meant that TV shows had to be very broad to reach such a huge national audience. So, Twin Peaks really stands out in that way. So I think there are multiple ways, and like someone who has, I think this is like my 5th time watching Twin Peaks, I can experience it on different levels because it is an art form that invites reflection and impression.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think you and I just got the same text messages.
Oh.
No, I agree with you. I love that about it. It's just layer after layer. And I think at first, at least, it does make pretty good broadcast TV because you could watch it for like the quirky weirdness. You could watch it for the, the police procedural. You could watch it for the murder mystery. You could watch it for the symbolism and the layers. You could watch it because you're a David Lynch fan. Like, there's all these reasons to watch Twin Peaks, especially at that time. And now I feel like a matured wine or an oaken barrel. It just gets better.
You're a real Somalian.
I'm a Somalian of television.
Well, I know when I first watched the series, the first season really just kind of kept me going. And I think the next episode is probably one of the best in the entire series. It has more landmark moments, I would say.
Okay. So before we go, what was your favorite moment or moment that stood out to you in this episode?
The main takeaways is how we set up who our suspects are. Mm-hmm. We leave this episode heavily suspecting Leo and Jacoby. Me personally, I'm suspecting Josie and Donna. Mm-hmm. But I think the biggest takeaway I had is there's the greasy looking roadie guy who Laura's mother sees in her bedroom, and it's I just wonder if someone who's never watching this before, if that is just another musing, another weird thing, or if it's to them very important. But to me, it stood out as this is something that is going to be launched throughout the series, and it only gets this one view. So I think that's really interesting.
Now, help me remember, because you're the expert. I read somewhere on the internet, so it must have credibility, that scene with Bob, the greasy man, hiding, that was an improv thing where I heard that Lynch saw he was working on set and they saw him in the camera and was like, oh yeah, stay there, I want to do that again, and just got him in the camera. Is that true, or is that something I made up in a dream? I feel like
there is some truth to that. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. It wasn't even part of the script. It was just oh, that was cool, do that. So,
no, I think he was a character, but it hadn't been cast. And the guy who plays Bob, Frank Silva, was a set decorator, but he was also an actor. So it's more oh, you're working on the crew, but you have this look that I like, so we're going to cast you.
That's cool. That's awesome. I love that. I love that flexibility and that ability and that vision to kind of know that that's coming and to integrate that early. I think it's not even a good, maybe it is a good scene. I'm not giving myself enough credit, but I feel one of the scenes that really caught me this time, it struck me as funny, is when Bobby is having dinner with his parents. So Bobby just gets out of jail, and he's the biker, tough guy, football player, not biker, but tough guy, football player, and he's eating dinner with his parents, and his dad is a very strict, you learn right away, oh, this is why Bobby's this way, because his dad is a very strict, I guess, Air Force kind of guy. They're eating dinner together. His dad's in full regalia and uniform from the military, and Bobby's sitting there eating dinner, smoking a cigarette, which I thought was hilarious for so many reasons. But at one point, his dad, he's trying to talk to him and feel him out and do his best to be, a dad. And you can tell it's very difficult for him. And Bobby's just giving him, crap or whatever. And then he hits the cigarette out of his mouth, or slaps Bobby, and the cigarette flies out of his mouth. And then right at the end of the scene, you get a cut of his mom, and she's just holding the cigarette in her hands. And she just looks at it, and she's like, "We're here for you, Bobby." And I just thought that was so funny. That just struck me as just so silly of yes, we're here for you, Bobby is good, but then she's holding the cigarette. Did she catch it in midair, or
No, he slapped Bobby's face, and then it flies from his mouth into a piece of meatloaf.
Right. Okay. And then she picks it out, and then but the way that she's holding it and the way that she says that line just struck me as just so perfectly silly, and it it's a meaningful line and a meaningful scene, but the holding of the cigarette for some reason just kind of took it up a notch.
Yeah,
I really like that a lot. That was my little takeaway of this scene. Thought that was nice.
That's
Um,
cool.
that
Well,
we met.
I'm looking forward to watching the next episode and reviewing it.
Yes. Anything that we should take away from this episode to the next episode? I know our first episode, the takeaway is Laura. She's the main character. Her dead body is the main character and her story. What are we taking from this into episode 3 or episode whatever, the next episode?
I would say pay attention to the details.
Ah, very inspired of you. Well, I've paid attention to the details, and I'll take your cue that it's time to wrap up the show. So thanks, everybody, for listening and watching, experiencing Doppelganger, another Twin Peaks podcast. I'm Doppelganger. I can't even say this word. I'm Doppelganger Dell.
I'm Doppelganger Aaron.
And thank you for not putting a fish in my percolator.
She's dead, wrapped in plastic.